So you're thinking of buying a home. That is fantastic. So fantastic. I'm happy for you. No, really, I'm happy for you. So much so that I'm outside in these beautiful city streets of Toronto, and I'm about to go speak with real estate agent Gloria Czomko, owner and founder of She Sells the City, and she's going to give us some home buying tips. Now, if you're a new home buyer, this is especially for you. You're thinking of buying in the near future, maybe not so near future. Maybe you're thinking of buying later on down the line. That's okay. This video is going to live here, and the information is going to be here for you to stay right here on this channel. Now, home buying is an exciting time. It is a great time, but it can be a disaster if you don't have the right information. And so I'm here, and we're going to give it to you. Come on in. Hey everybody, Danny O here, and I'm sitting here with real estate agent Gloria Czomko, owner and founder of She Sells the City, and she's agreed to give us 5 tips for new home buyers. So Gloria, it is spring, it is a really hot time for people to buy homes. Mm-hmm. So what are the 5 tips you can give to new home buyers?
Well, first of all, I would suggest that a potential buyer, sit down with an agent and interview the real estate agent. I think that they should look at least 3 different agents and ask them a series of questions. So some of the things that you do want to know is you want to know whether or not the agent does this part-time or does it full-time. You certainly don't want an agent that's doing it as a hobby. You really want someone where it's a passion, they turn it into a career, and they truly love it. Experience is important as to how many years they've been in the business, but also what is their own personal experience? You know, have they undergone huge renos? If you're looking at older homes, they may have electrical issues or structural issues and things like that. You want to know whether or not the agent you're working with has gone through that process themselves. So legally, they cannot advise you whether or not a wall can be removed, but they should have some sort of understanding as to what cost should be. You also want to know whether or not the agent works more as a listing agent or as a buyer's agent. Okay. So a listing agent in many cases, I mean, they're looking to list homes and they're not going to want to spend a lot of time with a buyer, a home buyer, especially a first-time home buyer.
And as a listing agent?
As a listing agent. Okay. So lots of times a listing agent will then have perhaps a team, and they then will pass you off to then a buyer's agent. So you want to just make sure that the person that you're meeting with is the one that you are going to be working with. Another thing you'd want to maybe ask the agent is, well, what happens after the closing? Okay. So lots of times, you know, I say there's 2 types of agents that are out there. One is one who's sheerly just transactions and volumes. Right. The other one is more of a consultant. They work more as having a relationship with you. So well after the home has been closed, in many cases, that's where you may even need extra time and attention. You may want to need, you know, referrals. If you're purchasing a home and let's say it needs a new roof, you've never owned a home before, you don't know who to call, you know, your agent should have a really good, strong database and a network of individuals they can refer to.
Right. And I like that you're saying that because prior to this conversation, I remember mentioning to you, I feel that that's what I lacked with my agent. We didn't take the time at all to do anything. We're just like, hey, you, yeah, okay. And I felt like a lot of areas where we would have maybe needed a little bit more hand-holding. Right. Even now, having lived in the home for so many years, we're realizing, maybe this wasn't the best fit, but it's never anything that was, you know, brought to our attention. Right. Like maybe, you know, if you have kids in the future, is this the right fit? Exactly. Where do you work? That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Lots of times. I mean, in the city of Toronto alone, we have 44,000 agents. So, I mean, there's no shortage of agents. You will definitely find one. You know, I'm sure your local barista will even be able to refer one to you if you're not sure where to go. But I think, you know, it's great to get referrals from friends and family members. That's a great way of doing it. But you want to make sure that the person you're with, that you're aligned with them, that they are a great fit, because you are going to be disclosing a lot of personal information to them. You're going to be talking finances. You're going to be spending a lot of time with them. I mean, today we're in a seller's market, so it's a little bit crazy. There's not a lot of inventory. We're getting into multiple offer scenarios, and it can be quite emotional and frustrating at times and overwhelming. So you want to make sure that the agent that you have is one that you have a good relationship with, that you trust them. You know, there is an established relationship there, that you really, the advice that they're giving you is something that you truly do value. And lots of times people will be like, oh, well, I have a friend who's selling real estate, or I have a family member. That can make for difficult relationships. in the future.
Yeah.
And it's not always good to mix business with personal relationships.
Totally
So
agree.
it's kind of like, if you and Uncle Charlie didn't have the greatest real estate experience, your next Christmas dinner could be a huge disaster and a very uncomfortable situation.
Very awkward.
Yeah, it's very awkward indeed. Yes.
Okay, so knowing and getting to know and having a really great agent would be tip number 1.
Correct.
Tip number 2.
Tip number 2. Please get pre-approved.
Ooh.
Huge. Don't sit home with the calculator and kind of like punching your own numbers and have this idea of what you can or cannot afford.
Right.
There is nothing worse than going out looking at homes that are out of your price range.
Right.
And then finding later on that you're not able to get pre-approved for that home. I mean, it's kind of like, let's say you're getting married and you start looking off at $10,000 wedding dresses, where at the end of the day you can only afford $1,000.
Right,
You're going to be so disappointed.
That's true, yeah.
The other thing is that it gives you a little bit more buyer power and buyer leverage when you're going in to make an offer. So lots of times, especially in a multiple offer scenario, you have a better understanding of what you can afford, as well as even passing off that information to the seller and the listing agent, saying, yes, my client has been pre-approved. They feel a little bit more confident. So the way that I could give you an example is this, let's say you're a seller, you listed your house in the market, 2 days later you get 2 offers. You get one for $2,000 over asking price, but that couple has not been pre-approved.
Right.
You get another offer, $2,000 under the asking price, but they've already been pre-approved. Which one would you go for?
For the couple that has been pre-approved. Yeah.
Right, because you're feeling more confident that
Right.
they've gone ahead and they've done the extra legwork. So it's just really a matter of peace of mind and having a great guidance and direction as to what you can afford or cannot afford. And in some cases, you may find you've been approved for even more than what you thought you were approved.
Right.
The other thing is that once you are pre-approved, you don't want to go out and make any type of crazy expensive purchases or decide to get a huge loan for like a brand new car and things like that, because it will start to play around with your credit.
Okay.
Because mortgage lenders will start looking at your credit history and everything like that, and any unusual activity and things like that. So
and I think I've heard a story like this. I guess kind of almost a nightmare, where I think somebody did go and make a big purchase, and I think they didn't get approved.
No, and then they won't.
Right.
Because a pre-approval is not necessarily a guarantee.
Approval, right.
At the end of the day, I mean, a bank does need to go into the property. They still need to do the appraisal. They will, look at your history once again and everything like that. So, so don't go out, buying Maseratis or, booking these bucket list vacations on your credit cards and things like that.
Not yet. Number 3.
So tip number 3 is lots of times people, when they first start off buying a home, they have this idea of their dream home, their ideal home, and you can't do that right off the bat. Okay. So basically, I like to say you should look at your next 5 to 7 year plan, and because that typically is what the average time is that a person spends in their first home.
Right.
So if you're on your own, or you're a couple, you don't necessarily want to be looking at 3-4 bedroom homes,
right?
When you're not thinking about having children yet or anything like that. So really kind of look at where your life is going to be within the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay. I think that's huge. We already purchased, but that's another thing I never considered. So I really was a little disappointed when we bought our home, because I thought, we're going to buy our forever home. Yeah. And we couldn't buy our forever home. But it was never I never received that reassurance that it was okay. That's normal. Most people don't buy their forever home.
They typically don't. And I don't think really until you live in a home, you don't really know what you like or don't like, right? So so you have some homes where you have formal living room, formal dining room, versus another home where it's big open concept, right? And that may work better for somebody versus, somebody who, I never used the formal dining room. Why do I want a formal dining room? I'd rather have this nice big open concept room with a family room and an eat-in area and do that, versus having rooms that I never even go into.
Right.
So I don't think you really know that until you go into a home and you actually live in it.
Yeah, and you see what works for you.
And you see what works for you.
Totally agree with that one. Number 4.
Number 4. So people often talk about location. Yeah. I really think they should be thinking about lifestyle. Yes. So, buying in an area where your agent says it's really hot or where your friend says it's really hot really may not be what you're right for you and what you like to do. So if you're somebody who after work you're a big nature nut or something and you just want to go like dirt biking and hiking or like play around in your garden, you may not want to live in the downtown core of the city. Like that may just drive you crazy, right? Or if you're somebody who like doesn't even want a house plant because like you just don't have a green thumb and you don't care about any outdoor space because you're really out every single night of the week and going out with friends and things like that, you know, maybe downtown living may be more for you. So I think you really have to look at what your interests are, what your hobbies are, and what you like to do in your spare time and on the weekends.
Okay, that brings us to number 5.
Number 5, and this is a big one because a lot of people forget about this. There are closing costs. And you have to pay them. It's you know, you have your down payment. So, you know, are you taking the closing costs out of your down payment, or is there still an additional amount that you have set aside for closing costs? So closing costs would include things like your legal fees, your lawyer fees. Closing costs would include things like in Ontario, we have a land transfer tax. In Toronto, we get taxed twice. So we have a municipal tax as well as a land transfer tax. So for example, on a $400,000 home, it's generally around $8,200 for a land transfer tax. Now, if you're a first-time buyer, you do get buyer's rebates as well, so it'd probably come out to about $3,000 within that ballpark. But these are things that you do need to keep in mind and you do need to know, as well as moving costs. If you're moving from an apartment or if you have furnishings and storage somewhere, or if you're living at your family's place, you need to bring that over to the new property. Also with a property, there are things like depending on the time of the year that you've bought into the home, if the seller's already prepaid their property taxes, well, they're going to need an adjustment, right? So they're going to need that money back that you're going to have to pay out to as well. So I mean, so your closing costs could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, if not even more in some cases, depending on what the prices are in land transfer taxes and everything like that. So a lot of people kind of forget about that. They have their down payment, and that's every single penny that they own, and then they forget afterwards, oh my gosh, right?
And they're like, I can actually buy a home, and they run out, and because I think that was what it was for us too. We I didn't know about the closing costs, and then fortunately we had the funds, but and because we were new home buyers at the time, there was like the rebate. But we barely made, and we were planning a wedding, which I would really recommend to people at the same time. But it was a lot of money going out, and that was a big surprise for us. And
then you have things too, as well as, you know, when the bank comes in to appraise the property, you need to pay for a bank appraisal. If you're doing a home inspection, that could be another, you know, $400 to $600 depending on the size of the home. So it's all these little extra costs that do come out.
Add up. And they add up.
Oh, and they add up.
Well, those are the 5 tips.
Those are the 5 tips. You can't assume that people know. Because they don't. And the first time doing anything, you just don't know. You don't even know what to ask.
That's true. You don't.
Like, I even think, like, when I was doing a website once for the first time, I didn't even know what to ask. I've never done this before. I don't know. You know, and
just putting things on
and then once you do one once, you're like, oh, I should ask this, I should ask that, or now I know this, you know. So it's the same thing. Like, if you've not gone through it, then you just don't know. And then the other thing too was like, really be careful about other people's advice and opinions, because what might be right for you may not be what, you know, would be good for mom and dad, and then they come piping along and they start giving their input, or your friends, and then you just get upset and frustrated, and then you just don't know what you should be buying or where you should be buying. And things like
you get confused.
You get really confused. Like, there's too many people's opinions, right? And they're not the ones that are going to be, exactly, right? And they're not the ones that are going to be living there.
That's true. And it's true, the key thing that you said is you're going to be the one living there.
That's right.
So don't try to please mommy and daddy.
And that's why it's important to have that relationship with a realtor. That could kind of bring you back on track.
Well, that's really great. That's very insightful. Thank you for all this knowledge. I hope you guys found these tips helpful. Gloria, thank you again for your time. Thank you for meeting with me. Yes. So if you would like to, if you're in the Toronto area and you're interested in buying or maybe even selling, and you want to hit up Gloria, I will put all of her information in the description box below. Again, thanks for watching, and rise and reign. I'll see you in the next video.